Hello. Welcome on back to my channel. I hope you all are doing well. Today, in honor of the Sephora Savings event with our beautiful model Sandra, I am creating what I'm calling my beginner's guide to makeup using all of my Sephora must-have products, which you can find in store or on Sephora.com. So thank you to Sephora for partnering with me for this tutorial. And without further ado, if you want to learn how I created this look right here, then keep on watching. So to begin, I'm using the One Size Hydrosculpt Moisturizer to prep Sandra's skin with. This is such a solid skin prep product. It gives the skin deep hydration. It sits beautifully underneath makeup. It never causes pilling. And because the texture is lightweight, it blends similar to that of a gel-like formula. It absorbs quickly without leaving any heaviness behind. Next, I'm using the Belief Aqua Balm Eye Gel to further hydrate the under eye area. I love this formula because, similar to that moisturizer, it has that same lightweight gel consistency. It feels fresh on the skin, it layers well, and doesn't leave behind any residue. So concealer sits beautifully on top. Next, I'm using the One Size Secure the Blur Primer, and this is that kind of primer I especially recommend for beginners because it smooths the skin in a very forgiving way. It doesn't dry the complexion out, it doesn't leave a white cast, and it creates that soft, even canvas without making the skin feel tight. You know what I mean? It's just one of those products that works well on just about anyone and is very hard to overdo. For foundation, I'm using the HAUS Labs Triclone Skin Tech Foundation. I think I've featured this in the last 2 or 3, maybe 4 savings event videos I've done, which honestly says everything because I keep reaching for it. It gives that beautiful medium coverage, a dewy skin-like finish, and the texture wears so well throughout the day without looking heavy. The shade range is also incredibly well done. I apply it first with a foundation brush, as you see, and then I always go back over everything with a sponge just to press it in further and lift any excess product. That combination right there is really what gives you the most natural finish. Next, for concealer, I'm using the Patrick Ta Soft Blur Concealer, and what I'm doing here is letting it sit for just a moment before blending. I'm concentrating it onto the inner corners first and allowing it to slightly dry down and become, tacky, because that gives you noticeably more coverage once you blend it out. But before we do that, I'm using the Say Cream Bronzer to bring warmth and structure back into Sandra's skin. So I'm placing that around her forehead, underneath the cheekbones, underneath the jawline, and just a smidge around the nose. Then I'll go back in and soften everything out once more with the sponge, really taking my time with this blend. In fact, while I'm working on this, let's break down the details of the Sephora Savings event, for those of you who don't know about the tiers and all that. So the event is currently happening. It began on April 10th and it ends on April 20th. Rouge members have access right now with 20% off. VIB members have access starting on the 14th with 15% off. And insiders will also have access beginning on the 14th with 10% off. And of course, the last day to shop the event for all tiers is April 20th. You can shop as many times as you like within those dates. You can shop online with their multi-use code SPRING SALE. And I do want to say the Sephora collection is 30% off. So if you aren't already, I highly encourage you to sign up to become a Sephora Beauty Insider. I'll put the link down below if you need it. And of course, as always, I'll put the links down below for all the products I used today, since everything I'm using to create this look can be found in Sephora or on Sephora.com. So yeah, now that we have this beautifully blended, let's blush up the cheeks using this Makeup by Mario cream blush in the shade Pale Petal and placing it right onto the highest points of her cheeks. For beginners watching, a really helpful trick with blush is to start exactly where you want the most color payoff first, then diffuse outwards. I call it the yellow brick road technique because I start in the center and I work in, like a little circular motions outward, and that gives you the softest, most foolproof blend every time. Now to set everything into place, I'm using these 2 shades of the One Size Ultimate Blur Setting Powders. First, I'm blending out any creasing that may have happened underneath the eyes, then lightly pressing the powder in with a brush. Right now, I'm using the translucent shade, but around the perimeter of the face and everywhere else, I'm switching into Sweet Honey. Sweet Honey has that warmer yellow tone to it, which helps preserve the warmth we built into the complexion. It keeps everything from pooling gray or ashy and just melts much more naturally into the skin. Next, I'm using this Patrick Ta Blush Duo in the shade She's the Moment. I think this is easily one of my top 3 shades from him. I'm lightly dusting this over the cheeks to build a fresh flush of color, and I love these duos because they're incredibly practical. If you wanted one blush product instead of using both, a separate cream and powder, this is honestly a better route because you already get both formulas in one compact. And now that everything is set, I'm going to go in with this baking technique. I'm mixing Sweet Honey with translucent, which gives the perfect balance of tone underneath the eyes. We'll let that sit for just a moment and brush it away shortly. But before that, I'm using the Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Wiz. Of course, this has to be on my Sephora must-haves list because it's Anastasia. It's still one of my most reliable brow pencils in my makeup kit. The shade range is excellent. The formula is consistent, and it gives you control without ever looking harsh. Then I'm using the Makeup by Mario Master Mattes palette. If you're truly a beginner and want one eyeshadow palette that covers almost everything, this is the one I would tell you to buy because it gives you every neutral tone you need for everyday definition. I'm using one shade across the lid, then taking a deeper tone through the crease to contour the eye a bit. That adds depth and shape and just enough sultriness without making it feel too heavy. Then I'll bring those same tones underneath the lower lash line. What I like about this technique, guys, is that it works on almost every eye shape because it's really about enhancing is what it is. It's enhancing what's already there. We're keeping everything matte, neutral, and very wearable. You can always deepen it for the evening with black or keep it softer for daytime. Now for liner, I'm using this One Size liquid liner and I'm choosing brown today. If you don't already own a brown liner, I really do think it's worth picking one up during the event because it gives definition in a softer way than black. It's a little more forgiving and it's easy to wear, especially if you're newer to liner. Then for mascara, of course, Lancome Hypnose Mascara. It's still one of the best formulas on the market, in my opinion. I think Lancome does an excellent job across the board in the mascara category, but what I especially like about it is that the formula actually performs even better as it dries slightly over time because it grips the lashes more and gives you even more lift and extension. Now, if you really want to amplify the lashes, look no further than Velour. They make my favorite clusters, hands down. I always pick some up during the Sephora Savings event because they're incredibly easy to use. 3 or 4 clusters gives you that natural but noticeably fuller lash effect. They're comfortable and they really make a huge difference, don't they, without feeling overdone. Next, I like to tap back into the blush and use whatever is left on the brush to dust away that baking powder. This brightens the under eye even more and keeps that whole area connected to the cheeks. Then to push it one step further, I'm using this Fenty Pink Kilowatt highlighter and placing it onto the cheeks. I don't know what's gotten into me, but I have been reaching for this consistently lately. If you've watched my channel for a while, you know that pink highlighter is usually not my thing, but lately I've been loving what it does because it catches the light beautifully and works so well with the blush tones. Now I'm adding a little bit of mascara onto the bottom lashes for that open-eyed effect, then moving on to the lips with the Makeup Forever Limitless Brown Pencil. I'm tracing this along the borders first, but today I'm really focusing more on liner work than I am lipstick. Then I'll take a brush and softly diffuse it inward so we get that seamless ombre effect. If you haven't tried softening your lip liner inward like this, it makes such a difference. I encourage you to try it out. Then, using the Sephora Plumping Gloss in the shade Outrageous, I'm layering this right on top for that high shine finish. I love this gloss because it has just enough tint and shimmer to create that fuller, dimensional look on the lips without overpowering the liner underneath it. And then for the body, I like to use this Patrick Ta Body Balm because it gives the skin that fresh, healthy sheen, almost like you've just come back from the beach, you know? I place it right onto the shoulders and collarbones where the light naturally hits. And then lastly, to set the makeup, I use 2 setting powders, starting with the One Size Powder Melt Spray. This is what I use anytime I want powders to completely melt into the skin, especially if the complexion starts looking a little too dry or a little too powdery. It immediately brings back that natural sheen. Then to lock everything into place, I follow up with the Until Dawn Setting Spray. It's a very different formula, but it's honestly the perfect thing to get the makeup to last all day, which makes this the final step in how I created this glamorous look on my naturally beautiful model.
Feels so romantic. I miss my last rain fire. It's cinematic. Loading casino highlights. Yeah, you're my addiction. You're my obsession. That's just how I love.
And there we have it, kids. I hope you all enjoyed today's tutorial. If you did, be sure to give this video a big ol' thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. You can also check out more of my work on my Instagram at Painted by Spencer. And until next time, I'll see you soon.